Welcome to the 24K Life Podcast. I'm your host, Derick, Gant. We are here on our journey to create a life of excellence. You know, the 24K Life is all about how you can position yourself through tools, techniques, experts, interests, and insights on how to elevate your personal life to become the absolute best version of yourself, i.e., pure gold, so that you can do the things that come natural to you, that come easiest for you, and that elevate you and your network's life. Today, we're bringing in an expert, a manifestation expert. She is absolutely incredible. I've seen some of her videos, I've watched some of her interviews, checked out her social, and she is ready. We have JJ Flizanes, and she is from a personal trainer to an empowerment strategist, and she has been empowering people since 2005. Now, I have 100 billion questions for JJ because it seems like to me that then so many people are tapping into this area, but I feel the undercurrent that they're missing something, or maybe they're expecting something that isn't really the way things work. So we brought JJ on so she can fill us in. JJ, how are you?
Derick, I'm great. Thank you. 100 billion. I know we're not going to get to all those questions today, but I can't wait to get started on some of them.
Yeah, a lot of questions. I was always the curious George kid in class. I always had questions. Usually piss people off because they don't want to answer that many questions. But in this environment, it's my zone, so I get to dig as much as I want. And I promise you, you have all of the answers. Let's start with your background. Tell us, you've been doing this since 2005. What did you do before?
Well, I first learned about law of attraction in 2001, and I was a personal trainer. I was driving a lot and this is before podcasts for me. I'm sure they existed in 2001, but I didn't know about them. And I had a coach at the time who introduced me to Abraham Hicks, which basically is law of attraction. And I was listening to the same CD over and over again, but I think I'd first popped it in to my CD player in my car. And as I was driving and I heard the words, you are the creator of your own reality. And I about wrecked my car because I was like, holy cow, that is great news. If I am the creator of my own reality, I don't like it, I can change it. That is the best news ever. Now,
Right.
I've come to learn throughout the years, because of course I went spouting that all around, that not everyone receives it that way. Because if you have had some, not good things happen to you, which we all have had, but some people take that as a reflection of who they are. And so they feel shame when I said that, because maybe they've had some really traumatic things and they immediately go, well, I didn't ask for that. I didn't want that. Does that mean I'm not deserving? Does that mean I'm a bad person? So there's been a lot of misinterpretation and misunderstanding of the law of attraction, because on one level, people want to be able to simplify it down to a very simple, and there is a very simple, here's the bottom line. But then everything in between the bottom line of what it's about and getting to do it and sort of consciously working it and co-creating, if you will, effectively for the things that you want, there are blocks and barriers in between. And this is like a theme right now in all of my groups, in my mastermind group and my rewire group, because people are finally getting to the place where they want to commit to just doing the work. And I'm like, and they're like, oh my God, I'm finally doing it. It feels really good. I'm like, right. And all this other stuff that we do, it just are the reasons why you can't do it. It's the blocks. It's the understanding of, why can't I just be happy? Why can't I just vibrate high? So I learned about law of attraction 2001. I was a personal trainer. Prior to that, I was an actress. And actually, these may sound like they don't fit, but how it really, really fits now is everything sort of evolved into how I work with people now, which is, I've always been curious like you. Any chance you're a Sag?
No.
Are you a Gemini?
I'm not.
Oh, okay. I wonder if you have any of those in your planets, but, and not that other signs aren't curious, of course, but I was always the curious kid, also asking, like, why do they do that? And we do this. Why do you go to that church? I go to that church. Why do they drink wine? And we drink grape juice. Why do you fast? I ask the same, like, whys.
Mhm.
And self-reflective whys early on. Why do I feel this way? Why did I act that way? Why did that person do that? Why did they feel that way? And I've always asked those questions until I found my answers. So I have found my answers, and I don't ask as many questions as I used to, because I found the answers that satisfy me to
Mhm.
give me a framework and a tool and an understanding to some of those deep questions that I had growing up. And that even happened during my marriage and then through to the end to my divorce. That was like the biggest, best education ever in all of this, because I was never getting divorced. I'm sorry. No, I'm super committed. So to pull all of my experience and background into now means I care about human behavior. I always have, and I'm curious. And the acting piece, actually, funny enough, the kind of acting schools that I had attended taught me how to look through someone else's eyes.
Mm.
And it's a skill that I don't think most people have. I think that most people assume that this is how I interpret the situation, and everyone else is going to see it the same way too.
Right.
And just right off the bat, no, they're not going to. And there's at least 50 reasons why they're not going to,
Mhm.
and 20 different frameworks that I teach to help you understand why they don't see it the way they do, and to start to see it the way that maybe they see it, which is different than you. So acting really gave me that insight to put on a complete different circumstance and character and all the things, the environment, all that. When you step into that and you use yourself as a vessel, you see things differently, because it's
Right.
not you. It's not you. It's not your world. It's not your life. It's another life completely. So fast forward, and now that plus the personal training, and then moving into empowerment strategist, and even now what I'm doing with core wounds and core wound mapping and rewiring core wound patterns, I've now become the trainer on the emotional stuff, because I'm
Mhm.
sure whether you've had a trainer or not, everyone can understand that as a trainer, I don't even work myself as hard as when I've had a trainer. I've had a trainer and I'm a trainer. And
Right.
even by myself, I do not push myself. I mean, I went to the gym yesterday and I thought about it. I pushed myself for all of it except like the last set of something. I'm like, okay, I'm done. Like, but had someone been standing over me, I would have worked harder. Had someone been
Absolutely.
expecting more of me, I would have
Mhm.
pushed myself. And when it comes to rewiring core wound patterns and changing and healing these beliefs, it's going to put you outside your comfort zone. And so I'm sort of back in the role of personal trainer, but under the self-development piece to
Mhm.
really heal the things that are the foundation of your pain and of the patterns that you do in all aspects of life, from business to
Right.
money to relationships to happiness to health.
Yeah. So what do you think? It seems to am I missing it, or is there seemingly this big push, meaning that so many more people are aware of fighting and or working to try to create their own reality? Is it, this all started with The Secret? I'm not sure, but it just seems like that it's just so much more of it, and the bigger momentum moving of people talking about this. Is that accurate, or is it just me and my perception?
So it was a belief. I mean, it's been around for a long time. Esther was not the first person to channel an entity as Abraham, although it's really a group of energy. But that was not the first, but it's been the most popular. It's been the most in our face. And The Secret came way later. Abraham's been around a long time. She was channeling for 30 years. And maybe even 10 or 15 years before The Secret came on the scene. The Secret was,
I read that story about her and The Secret. I thought that was shady, but anyway,
yeah, well, The Secret made it commercialized.
yeah.
The thing about law of attraction is that you will attract things that are in alignment with who you are, and what you want. And so the teacher will appear when the student is ready. And when you've commercialized it, which is fine because it did create a bigger awareness, but they tried to dumb it down and people didn't really understand. And so people who weren't really ready for it, they thought they were because they were in scarcity.
Hmm.
They're out of alignment and scarcity. And now they're like, oh my God, all I have to do is this and I'll make millions of dollars. And then when they tried it, it didn't work. They just went, oh, well, it doesn't work because I did what you told me to and it didn't work. And that
Right.
must be the end of it. So the problem with commercializing it is that it put it in the hands of people who weren't ready for it and weren't ready to really receive it. But again, so I think it's now been seeded, and those that are ready are, and those of us that were ready and before it came out, who were excited about it because we were already doing it, because I started Law of Attraction in 2001. The movie came
Mhm.
out in like 2006 or 2007. And
Okay.
I was late to the game. I mean, it had been going on there have been many channelers that have been speaking about this for a long time. But I think again, the commercialization, and then I mean, I was one of the first probably one of the first 5 manifestation podcasts and I started my show 10 years ago, but I put Spirit, Purpose, and Energy out in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And when you typed in law of attraction, I was like one of the top. If I wasn't number 1, I was like number 3. There weren't a lot of law of attraction podcasts in 2016. And now a new one comes out every day. So, right. So I think, yeah, because people want to believe they want to believe and they want to use it because they understand that if everyone's talking about it, there must be something to it.
Mm-hmm.
But most people don't know how to use it or how to get out of their own way to receive it.
So what are they missing? And I know that's a broad question and different people are missing different things, but in general, what are they missing?
So you attract where you are, not what you want. So in order for you to get more than what you have to grow you into being someone who believes you deserve more and can receive more. And that's the simple answer, but it's not simple for people to do because they don't understand what prevents them from growing.
Right.
And that goes back to, I guess, a resource I would share with your audience that would be beneficial for everyone. Because I heard you say a life of excellence and, positioning yourself and being the best version of yourself. There's a book, I don't know if you've read it. It's by Gay Hendricks called The Big Leap. But The Big Leap is, in my opinion, Gay's best work. And it's something everyone, if you own a business, should absolutely have and do and revisit maybe every year. Because The Big Leap, what it did for me was it was the framework of why people can't get more than they want when they're trying to apply law of attraction principles and understandings.
Okay.
Because The Big Leap has you look at, well, what is your zone of genius? What are your upper limits? What are the beliefs that you have that create these upper limits? And now we get to see, oh my God, this, and then how do you upper limit? Do you get sick and hurt? Do you worry? Do you deflect? Do you squabble with people? Where are you out of integrity with yourself? And I've created, like when I interviewed Gay for the first time, I said, oh yeah, I created a worksheet out of your book. And he's like, oh, maybe you can send that to me. And I'm like, no, you can make one yourself. You wrote the book. Like I just extracted the questions in the book and made a worksheet. I've been using it now for, 5 years with my clients because I want them to understand these ways they upper limit, why they upper limit, what their zone of genius is, and if they're in it. And then we start to see and give a feel for and identify what that container looks like. So so on the simplistic side, it's the ability to receive. How much joy, love, success, and abundance do you allow yourself to receive? And I use it as like a number, like a gas tank or a temperature. And maybe let's just say scale of 1 to 10. And the thing is, it keeps growing. There is no sort of done point because if you want something more than you have right now, and then you grow yourself into receiving that, then there's the next level and then the next level. And it doesn't really stop. You can absolutely stop at any level that you want to and never even grow because you don't want to push yourself that hard or you don't want to, do the work. But let's just say on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most, you can receive the most the universe is trying to give to you. What do you think your temperature gauge is? Are you at 50%? Are you at 80%? And that starts to give us a number of realizing that things might be coming to you that you're not allowing in. So how do we change that? And that's kind of the work I've been doing with Core Wounds, with The Big Leap, with, all the things that I'm doing because it looks at what the block is. So to go back to like a core wound, for instance, if you have a core wound of being devalued, which, for a lot of people, that's a big one, being disapproved of, being ignored, not feeling good enough. Okay. So if that's a core wound, which is a very common core wound, and you then want more than what you already have, there usually becomes this story or attachment to, but I don't deserve it because no one else has given it to me, or the world doesn't give it to me. Like there becomes there's a belief inside of you that was created from the time you were born until you were 7, because your brain's just recording things as fact. You're not conscious yet. You're not able to see different choices of how to interpret something. You have no consciousness until you're about 8. So our brain just decides, oh, I was abandoned. My parents didn't come when I was crying. Oh, I was ignored. I wasn't important. And so these beliefs become your subconscious. And so those subconscious beliefs are the foundation from which every choice gets made for the rest of our lives, trying to get these needs met, but it's all unconscious. So most of us don't even know what they are. So uncovering them at least gives us a map and a place to start with, how do I value myself more? How do I allow more in? And then, I mean, even me, there was a day that I was speaking, I was doing a podcast interview. I was being interviewed by a doctor who trains lots of doctors, who is a very well-known cancer doctor who has the metabolic approach to cancer. And she had me on with the doctors, and I'm telling you, I upper limited. I was like, my like neck went, oh my God. And getting sick and getting hurt is not a normal upper limit for me. But that day it was, because then after that, I was being interviewed on a Facebook page with someone who is way more famous than me in the law of attraction space. And I thought, oh my God, I'm coming into her group. She's been teaching this longer than me. And I'm going to be talking about law of attraction. I'm like, oh my God, my whole body seized up, because it was like, it was confronting. It was imposter syndrome. It was, oh my God, am I going to be good enough? Like, of course I got triggered. And of course my core wounds were in my face, but I breathed through it and I did it. I relaxed and I allowed in more. And it's been, and then we keep going. So, but if most people, but some people, like the upper limit would stop them. They'd be like, oh my God, no, I can't do it. I'm hurt today. I have pain. And then you'd quit. You'd run in the opposite direction. And then you'd never step into that. You'd never grow that container.
Self-sabotage.
Yeah.
So tell me about, I did hear you mention on one of your podcasts that I checked out about, not being fully aware, just operating off facts until the age of 7. So how does a person upgrade their consciousness?
Did a whole summit on that for 2 days. Well, there's many ways. And the first way is just like you have said, and I have said, just start to be curious. And a lot of people who don't identify as curious, but they think they're conscious, could still be more curious. Like one of my clients yesterday, she makes assumptions. She's quick to make a judgment. She assumes something. And I'm like, stop. I said, don't automatically like knee jerk. Stop for a second. You still want to acknowledge your feelings, but don't blame somebody else. Don't just decide something bad happened. Like, be curious. Say, this is what I'm feeling right now. And if you have to cry, cry. And if you have to scream, scream, and feel your feeling, and then say, well, why am I feeling that? Why did those words create this feeling? What's the need? I have a whole system for uncovering that, and I can teach it if you want me to. Here, it's a 3-step process. There's a free download. Everybody can download it, and it's a tool that will help you uncover a need, so that when you get into the moment of a negative feeling, you can acknowledge it, figure out the need, solve it, and move on, instead of what you want me to teach it. Okay.
Sure.
All right. So
now, first of all, before you teach it, is this available on your website at jjflizanes.com?
It is, but you won't be able to find it. So I'm going to give you a pretty link. Okay. So the pretty link will be jjflizanes.com/feelings list. So that is feelings list.
Perfect.
And there's a 2-page document that you can download. And I'm going to show you the second page. The second page is the feelings and needs list. And I would recommend that when everybody downloads it, I'm telling you, I'm not exaggerating, print 10 copies of the feelings list. Okay. Because I want you to put it on your desk. I want you to put it in your car. I want you to put it in your bag. I want you to put it in the kitchen on the refrigerator. I want you to put it in everywhere you may have a discussion or an argument or be triggered. Have one on you at all times. Because when you have a negative emotion, and so let me combine this with law of attraction. The higher your frequency, which means you're in alignment and you're feeling the positive feelings, the more you'll attract stuff to keep you in a higher frequency. The goal is not to never feel a negative emotion, because negative emotion helps us to clarify. It helps us to expand. It helps us to grow. So you will always have some kind of contrast, big or little, at some point in time, but your ability to see it, deal with it, pivot from it, and acknowledge it, and even transmute it will get better and better, so that you're not so thrown off. I came back from a hike this morning right before I got in the shower to come here, and I had a plate that my ex-boyfriend in college gave to me. And I literally, this morning, I don't ever touch it. It's sitting somewhere. And I went over and I rearranged it because it was turned a little bit. Well, I come home from the hike and it was broken because I have cats and they ran across. Anyway, I've had cats 30 years and it's never been broken. It's moved to 10 different places. And in that moment, I had the option to interpret that in a couple different ways. I could have looked at it and been extremely sad that this plate that I loved, that was given to me by my ex-boyfriend, was like the end of the line. I could have made up this dramatic, oh my God, it's been 30 years and I have this plate. Well, I did do that. But then I thought, all right, but that's not going to feel okay. So I bought another plate. because it's a very specific place. I went online. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go see if I can find another one, and I'll still think of him when I see it, and I'll feel good that I have it. Maybe I'll go buy 2 of them just in case another one breaks. But it's this understanding that I could have just decided that it was like a traumatic thing because I'm very sentimental about stuff like that, and it meant a lot to me, and I was sad. But I didn't decide that it had to stay that way. I fixed it. So we have we always are presented with the opportunity to interpret something and to tell a story about it. And the more you can understand that some of your stories become automatic and you decide and you assume and you react, and that some of that's core wound stuff. But if you can take a breath before reacting on something that's not super woundy and decide, how should I interpret this? If I tell this story, that feels bad. But if I tell this story, that feels better. And they're both true.
Right.
So in the places where you're stuck in a negative emotion and you can't get out of it, the reason why we feel negative emotion is because we have a need that is not being met, or the perception of a need. So what I mean by that is sometimes, like in the case of love and love languages. Do you know the work of Dr. Gary Chapman? He's done the 5 love languages. Okay.
Absolutely.
So if my love language is quality time, but yet my partner is never with me, or if my love language is words of affirmation, but my partner's is acts of service.
Right.
People will be like, oh my God, my partner doesn't love me. He never compliments me. Well, that's not his love language. And he's acts of servicing you all the time, but you're not receiving it because you're not allowing it in that way because it's not your love language.
Right.
So this is where, if you're having a negative emotion, you may be perceiving something incorrectly. And it's there, but you don't see it because the way that you interpret things. So let's start with, if you have a negative emotion, because you're not going to do this exercise if you have a positive emotion. If you're in a positive emotion, milk it, stay there, make it bigger, make it last, keep working it, like really milk it, expand it, make it big. And then when you get knocked off with a negative emotion, go, okay, what do I feel? Step 1. So on the top of this list is 100 different feeling words. Most people, if you say how many feelings are there, they'd probably give you 5. The reason why there are 100 is because under the category of mad, and I'm sure you could feel into this, it's irritated is very different than rage. Yes?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. But they're both under mad, but one is small and one is huge.
Right.
So of course, where we go with it and what we do with it's going to be different. So we can't just lump everything under one category. So we want to fine tune what we're feeling. So you would look at the list and decide, step 1, what am I feeling? And I would say gravitate towards what your body acknowledges. You can read if you don't know, just read them and be like, oh yeah, that's it. Okay. The body has confirmed that's what I'm feeling, and just limit it to 2 or 3 max for your situation. And then, okay, we figured out the feeling. Well, the reason why you're having this feeling is because a need is not being met. Now, when we hear need, especially in this time and space and culture, we think dependent, we think weak, we think needy. That's not what I mean. There are 86 basic human needs. And this work comes from Dr. Moshe Rosenberg, who wrote Nonviolent Communication. And if you've never heard of Dr. Moshe Rosenberg, he grew up in the time of riots, actually. Okay. And what stimulated him to want to become a psychologist was him asking, what drives people to act this way? The curiosity to wonder why people kill each other. Why do people act this way? So he became a psychologist. He wrote Nonviolent Communication. I thought it was the worst title ever. I didn't read that book for years because I was like, I'm not a violent communicator. I don't want to identify with that. But it is a brilliant book. However, I do teach this differently than it gets presented in the book, I will tell you. But I think both are necessary. I think what he does is absolutely necessary, but I think what I do is also needed first. Because if you can't identify it in yourself, I don't believe you're going to be able to see it in somebody else. So that's why we take responsibility first and do it for ourselves. So second step, what need is not being met? All right, so look at the needs. And I'll just read some of them so you understand what the list looks like. So again, we all need air, otherwise we'll die. We all need shelter and safety and excitement and fun and support and harmony and consideration and honesty and freedom and contribution and inspiration. Okay, these are some of the 86 basic human needs on this list. And why I think this is really important is because even as advanced as I thought I was back in 2000 and I don't know what it was, married at 8, maybe 12, somewhere around 2012, 13, before the podcast, I was definitely triggered by a couple that didn't want to do this mastermind group that I was doing. It was free, by the way, which is why I was like, what is your problem? And why don't you want to do this? Because I wanted to go deeper and do like a whiteboarding session. And we hadn't done that yet. And the husband was all in, but the wife was like, I don't think that's a good use of our time. I'm like, it's free. Why is not a good use of your time? I didn't understand. I didn't comprehend. And so when I got home from the meeting, the meeting that we'd had, and not everybody wanted to move forward and do this other thing that I thought would be super cool and effective, she had said no. And so I was like, all right, what am I feeling? Now, my ex-husband didn't like her. So he was like, she's this and she's that. And I said, stop. It's not about her. And so I want to let everybody know and remind you that your negative feelings are not about another person.
Mm-hmm. About you.
Ever. Okay. Now, mine is someone attacking you, literally beating you or wanting to kill you. Yes, you're going to run the other direction. You're not going to work this out in your brain. You're going to listen to your body and it's going to want to run. Okay. But like on the emotional level, on the, like, you've misinterpreted something or they've said something, even if they've been mean to you, it's still not about them. Mm-hmm. Because if someone was, so Derick, if I was to say to you, you're kind of a slacker, you're a little lazy, you don't really care about what you're doing. Like, would that bother you at all?
No.
Because
I put immense amount of work into what I do, who I am, and how I got here.
Because it's not true.
Exactly.
If someone says something to you that's not true, it won't bother you at all. But when someone says something that you don't like, it's because possibly you might believe it.
Right.
Or part of it might be true.
Yeah.
So I come home, I'm frustrated. I don't know why. I'm so upset. So I look at the list. I'm like, what am I feeling? I was frustrated. I was sad. I was angry. I go to the needs. I have no idea what my need is because I've never been in this situation before. So I look at the needs list and I start reading them. I'm like, acknowledgement, awareness, beauty, celebration, clarity, closure, competence, contribution. Contribution. I have a need for contribution that I didn't even know I had because until that moment, until that situation. So once I got to that, I'm like, oh, okay. I have a need for contribution. Good to know. Okay. So now I feel clear and I'm feeling better. Step 3, after you figure out what the need is to create strategies, more than one, to get that need met. Now, here's the biggest, most important part of that sentence I'm going to say next. So listen up. You're going to create some strategies, more than one, to get that need met that do not require anyone else to be different.
Interesting. So in this example, you were actually contributing, but you had a need to contribute something greater that wasn't accepted. So you figured out through your list and your 3-step program that you were missing that contribution. But I'm just curious because you were actually contributing, but you just wanted to do more. Is that what it was you were feeling?
I was contributing. I want to contribute, but this situation, and I'll use a phrase one of my old financial teachers used to say, you're trying to sell a lawnmower to somebody without a lawn.
Got you.
I'm trying to sell something to someone who doesn't want it.
Yep. Or they weren't ready.
Either way, why am I wasting my time trying to get 2 people that aren't interested to buy? It was free to do something to buy something I'm selling that don't want it. I'm like, and that opened me up to this whole like, oh my God, I'm going to start a nonprofit. I'm going to give it, because there's a ton of people that I'm sure in the world who want what I have to help them with their business. They don't want it, but they're 2 people. There's a lot more people on the planet, a lot more people in California that I can go, right? So that's where I went. So not only was I started off in a bad place, where I ended up was way higher, and what I grew to was way more excited about the possibility of what I could do now that I could identify what the need was.
Excellent. So that is an amazing assignment. And tell us the / again. So it's jjflizanes.com /feelings list. So if you're driving, you're out working out, and you want to check that out a little bit later, go check it out. Go to the website, and it's super easy. It's jjflizanes.com /feelings with an S list, and download that. I can see how meaningful or effective that would be in certain circumstances of frustration and really kind of wanted to know what's eating you. And you having that list of things was really important and impactful because, like you said, we're used to 5 or 6 things, and then okay, it's none of those. So obviously, the other person screwed up. So
Well,
yeah.
it's the victim mentality that we don't realize we're in
Hmm.
because without the identification of the contribution and without the awareness that, in sales, you have a target audience and you got to know who they are. And when they say no, they're not interested, move on.
Right.
Unless they have an objection that you can overcome, which they didn't. They said, we don't think it's a good use of our time. And I'm
Right.
like, you're ridiculous. How do you why? It's free. It helps your business. But I think what it came down to is they didn't believe there would be value, which
Of
is
course.
fine. And they didn't want to take the time. But I was like, and where I'm standing, I'm like, it's free. And why not try it? You've never done it before.
Right.
Even just doing it, that kind of exercise for me, I've had people where I've sort of done little back and forth coaching, masterminding with, who have nothing to offer me in terms of they don't know my industry, they don't know where I am, but it's not even about them. It's about taking the time and space to do the thing. And then I get the answers, but I have to
Hmm.
take the time to present it to somebody to be able to hear myself think it out loud or talk
I
about it.
love
So,
it.
so
Yeah.
I would have stayed stuck in the frustration about them had I not
Mhm.
identified the contribution. And then of course, again, it's strategies. And the strategy is go find someone else, go make a nonprofit, tell other people because they're not the only 2 people on the planet. So I can get my need met in other ways.
Right. Excellent. Excellent. I love it. So I have a few more questions for you. So tell us about how you started making wine.
Mm.
Look at her. She see that smile. For those of you that are listening on the podcast, she had a big ass smile and she's grabbed the
Well, because
bottle
no
of
one's asked me
wine.
about the wine. And because I made it for my audience. And I made it because, and I don't have, thank you for asking, because now I'm going to bring the book back from the shelf back onto my desk where I can reach it. There was a study done from Dr. Emoto, and he wrote a book called Hidden Messages in the Water. And it's a study of frequency.
Mhm.
Dr. Emoto, who's no longer with us, but took water from different parts of the world, from different situations. It's most of us, you asked about the trending sort of law of attraction manifestation conversation.
Right.
And I bet what people don't even realize is some of this goes back to I'm sure you've seen a bottle or those water bottles that are etched to say gratitude or joy or harmony, right? That comes from this study, the study of when you give positive energy to water and then you freeze it and then you look at it microscopically,
At the
the
crystals, yeah.
expression, those crystals express
Mhm.
differently under different frequencies.
It's
So,
amazing. It's just completely amazing work.
so my question was to myself, because I love wine. I have a wine podcast too called Something to Wine About. And but I also know between glyphosate and pesticides and blah, 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 all the things. When I go to the store and buy wine, and I don't really go to the store, I'm a member of many wine clubs, but let's say I go to the store or I go someplace where I don't know their farming practices. Most organic wine that I taste, I don't like it. And I
Mhm.
didn't want to keep trying to find a wine oh, let me find a new wine that's healthier for me. I'm like, no, how do I make the wine I love better? How do I make the region where I love the most, Paso Robles, California? How do I make that wine better? Because I'm not growing it, but I can do something about it. And I thought I can change its frequency. That's what I'm going to do. So that's how high vibrational wines became. I sourced grapes from vineyards that don't use glyphosate. So that's number one. I can't control that, the air and the water and the birds, but I can say that nobody uses glyphosate, which is Roundup. It's a forever
Mhm.
chemical that you do not want to be consuming because
Right.
it has a lot of negative effects on your body and your health. So that was one thing. And then I did a bunch of things to the wine. So I invite anyone who's interested to check it out. I did a 14-minute video about this whole concept. I showed you what I did to the wine, all the different processes to raise its frequency. Every bottle comes with a crystal. In fact, all of the wine sits under a active earthing blanket with a ton of crystals. Anyway, so I have, and I, it's very good, and it's also a higher frequency. So I did that. So no matter what was in it, if there were things that we didn't want in it, I can't control all those things, but the higher the frequency, the more easily our body will not even be in alignment with any of the negative things. It'll just wash right through you. So
I
I
love the
wanted,
concept.
thank you.
I have to order some. So my last question for you is: have you manifested the life that of your choosing? And if you haven't, and if you have or have not, either way, what's next for JJ? What are you manifesting next? So have you manifested it? And no matter what the answer is, what's next for you? Because you're doing so many amazing things. You have the book, you have several podcasts, you have the wine, you have your coaching practice, and I'm sure a ton of other things that we haven't gotten to today. But tell us answer those two questions for us.
Okay, up to date. Yeah, I could show you my growth of how I've grown and then what I've manifested because of the growth.
Okay.
With my ex-husband, we were in I was definitely in the most aligned place I'd ever been when I attracted him and when we got together. But again, as a curious, interested, passionate, truth-seeking person that I am, I grow very fast. And he probably, like most people, and especially men, have this assumption that once you get married, oh, cool, I'm done. I can relax now. Like, I don't have to do any more work. And I had the opposite belief. I had the belief of, oh, now you found your partner, now the work begins. And even if someone in the front of it says, sure, I'll do the work with you, until you're in it, you don't know what that requires of you or what it will require of you. And throughout my time in that relationship, I wrote a book called Fit to Love: How to Get Physically, Emotionally, and Spiritually Fit to Attract the Love of Your Life. The love of your life, by the way, is you. It's about your relationship with yourself first. And so for me, that was sort of my story. Like, when I wrote a book and I wasn't someone who lost 100 pounds in the fitness industry and was going to teach people how to do that, I thought, what is my story? And it's about how to use self-care to love yourself, and then what
I
that
love that.
attracts.
That is so dope, because not everybody has to lose weight. Not everybody has the same issue, but that is a great spin on it and a great result in the resulting, of actually creating the book. So that is super cool. So have you manifested a new mister?
Okay, so here's the fun story. So I fought tooth and nail. I learned, I stretched, I learned, I surrendered. I did everything I could. Part of my podcast was to save my marriage. I mean, I had people on who would educate me, and then I'd pray that he'd be listening because I also knew that he'd hear it from someone else. In fact, I know
Right.
he did. There was a podcast episode that I had recorded with a couple who they were on their way to get divorced. They were separated for a year. Their lawyer never filed the paperwork. They had a child, which connected them, though. But they weren't connected all the time. She was dating somebody else, or he was dating somebody else. And then a year later, they end up getting back together. And I interviewed them, and they talked about that it was the love language book that really, that was a key thing for them. And of course, I come home and I'm looking, and I see that there's some new love language books on the desk. So again, I knew that it was,
Oh, how dope is that?
well, but I knew
love
that
it.
was happening because I knew who I married. Like, I knew what he wanted. I knew the depth of the connection with another person he wanted. And there was hope there because I worked really hard. Like, 100% of my effort was about, even though he didn't see it that way, he thought all I wanted to be was famous. But he's like, oh, you want to be famous? I'm like, okay. One day you'll realize that this whole thing was to try to save our marriage and for me to grow and to help us be the best that we can be.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we get to the end of, like, I've tried everything, it's been 10 years or almost 10 years. It's been almost 9 years. And it was and he wanted to leave. He wanted to move out. And I was like, no, hanging on for dear life. No. And then I finally got the idea. And again, I think this is more men, so this isn't any disrespect. It happens for women too. But I kind of feel like some people need to be taken out of their environment to see things differently. Like,
Right.
if you're in the same house with the same person, the same routine, the same job, it's harder to see another option. Or that's why people like to travel or go on vacation, because you don't have a relationship with your environment. So now you're free and you open up and you have new possibilities. And so I finally went, this is a last ditch effort. Okay. His aunt lived up the street, and I was like, okay, you can leave now. And because although the shame kicked in of, I've written a book, I talk about manifestation, I teach manifestation,
Right.
and am I a big freaking phony? And are people going to think I don't know what I'm talking about because I couldn't save my marriage, and this thing that I manifested has now blown up in my face? So as I was holding on, I want to use and again, for anyone on the podcast, I'm gripping something in my hands. I was gripping the whole time. I'm gripping and I'm gripping, and I'm like, finally, I was like, okay, all right, universe, I'm releasing. I'm going to be okay. I forgive myself for not fixing this. I forgive myself that I couldn't figure out how to do it. I deserve more. I want more. I want to allow in more. And I had been doing law of attraction practices the entire time, living in a different reality, literally, than I was seeing. Everyone thought I was the happiest person they knew, which I was, but I wasn't because of my marriage. And right. And I released. I'm like this. I let go. And the second I let go, Derick, in 2 hours, my new guy showed up.
Wow.
Now, my new guy was a client of mine and a fellow podcaster, someone I was friends with, someone who was married. And all of a sudden he calls me to, like, I'm in the conversation with my ex about us separating. And I said, okay, I think it's time. I think it's time to separate. We're both crying. We're both talking about the details. And he's like, I said, oh, let's take 6 months. He goes, do you think 6 months is long? I'm like, fine, take a year, whatever, go. And well, financially, I can't move right now. I'm like, fine, we'll wait a couple months, whatever. We'll figure it out. I had no idea I was going to pay for the other half of the house, by the way. I was like, I don't know. I'm just going to figure it out. And so then and then I said, is there someone else? And he said, no. Is there someone else for you? And I said, no. And there wasn't. And then 2 hours later, my client and friend called me and said, I have to talk. My wife just left me.
Oh.
And I was like, ooh, something's in the air today. And so we talked, and he didn't know what I was going through. And I kind of figured this was coming for him. But and then there was a connection there, and we're still together. It's been 6 years, and we'll be together forever. So, but 2 hours, I was like, because literally the fear was, oh my God, I have so much shame around this whole manifestation thing. I couldn't do it. It didn't work out. I'm a failure. And then when I let go and said, okay, but my happiness is too important for me to stay in this cycle. I have to let go. The universe is like, boom. And then not only that, all of the law of attraction practices, all the things that I was reaching for and feeling into, and I'm looking forward to having someone to dance with me, someone to hold my hand, someone who wants to, all the things, boom, that's him. And I literally went, hold on, universe, I don't want it from a new person. I want it from that guy. And the universe is like, you're not going to get it from that guy.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
Yep. That's exactly what we do in a variety of areas. I want to lose weight, but I want to do it eating all this crap and not working out or doing it this way. And you have to figure out what's best for you. I love it. Great insights, JJ. I appreciate your being so transparent and open. I'm sure many people are going to dive into your website as well as the feelings list, because that was one of the most impactful live suggestions or deliveries that I've seen in many of my interviews. So I can't wait to download it myself. And I will definitely download at least 5 copies. I don't have a lot of places I go, so I'll leave one in the house and one at the office, and
put one in your wallet. Like you can, or take a couple pictures and put on your phone.
There you
and
go.
Then put it in a place where you can find it quickly, instead of like in your pictures. You don't got to scroll up and down. Like go somewhere, put in a file or something on your phone so you can pull it up and then just blow it up and take a look at it when you're out, and if you don't have the paper on you.
Excellent. I love it. So I'd like to, plant a seed and ask if I could have you back, because there's a whole nother universe that I want you to talk to us about. And that's your not necessarily your personal practices, but quasi your personal practices alongside of the things that you do with your clients. And what I'm referring to are the crystals. You asked me about my birthday. So obviously there's some astrology there. I want to find out if you're into numerology, or you have the flower of life behind you. So sacred geometry. So I want to ask you about all of those things that she's, in case for those of you that are just listening, she's nodding her head yes with this wide-eyed smile going, yep, all that. She's wearing the moonstones. So I want to know more. She's already mentioned what she does with the wine. And so I can only imagine what she does for herself physically and for her partner and her family. So I want to know more about those things, but I don't want to overwhelm our listeners today. But is that okay if I have you back to talk about those things?
Yeah, excellent. No, this is great. I love your curiosity. I love this conversation.
I told you.
Because I think that the conversation, you're asking the questions that some people don't ask. They just, until someone else presents them with something new to think about. And to toot my own horn for a second, to say what I am really good at is streamlining. The reason why my podcast was successful when I put it out, even though I do appreciate that I put out at a time where there wasn't a ton of law of attraction podcasts, because I probably it wouldn't be the same now. But I attracted people who were seeking it out, and they were searching, and what they would say is, well, you use the science. So now you kind of convinced me about this thing that I thought was woo-woo, that I thought was a religion, that I thought was weird, that I thought wasn't real. You've convinced me through the science. So I get to connect both left brain people to right brain concepts, and I can bring right brain people into why they need some structure and some left brain involvement in their life. Right. So it's sort of one of my zone of geniuses, if you will, to kind of do that and make things a little bit more easy to understand and break it down into simple steps.
Excellent. I love it. Hold on one second, JJ. So, I always want to bring you, the listeners, the viewers, individuals that make you tap in a little bit deeper. And that's what JJ has done for me today, and hopefully for you as well. Go to JJ Flizanes, and that's Flizanes, jjflizanes.com, and check her out. She has a breadth of information, resources, tools, and you cannot tell me you're not a wine drinker. You've got to go check out one of these bottles, even if it's just to see how it resonates with your inner being, your soul, your vibe, because I'm guessing it's something special. I order beads from I call her my bead lady, but anytime I want a new bracelet or a new mala necklace, or I have a new idea, I'll call her and tell her what it is. And she prays over it, and she does her thing over my beads. And so I cherish them because of the energy that has been infused in their creation. And that's what JJ just got done talking about. So I'm Derick Gant. I want you to be your best, bring your best, leave nothing to chance. Hey, have a great week, everyone.